Welcome to the Advance Your Art podcast, where we talk about the journey from artist to entrepreneur and everything in between. You've worked hard to hone your craft. Now take it to the next level with tips, techniques, strategies, and routines used by successful artists to grow their businesses and careers. Now, let's get started and have some fun with your host, Yuri Cataldo.
Hello, Sarah. How are you today? Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Hello, how are you?
I'm doing very well. Thank you again for chatting with me. I really appreciate it.
I'm looking forward to this today.
Excellent. So I'd like to start by asking how you describe yourself and what you do these days.
Okay. I would describe myself, I believe, as a leader. I like to, I love people. I love ideas. I'd say I'm an idealist, I believe. I love to, if there's a procedure or rule that doesn't make sense, I like to push the status quo. I like to push boundaries. I love creativity and freedom in my work. And I love to maximize the growth of other people. So what I do, I'm an educator. I teach at the college level, and I'm a speaker. I go and speak at colleges and universities as well as businesses, and I'm an author. So with all of those different platforms, I like to use scientific principles of human behavior, some brain research, and I like to help leaders and companies succeed.
Wonderful. And I always love chatting with you because I feel smarter at the end of the time, having learned so much, which was great. So you have a huge number of degrees and interests, and I want to talk about your journey from where you first started to what you're doing now. So you originally went to school for elementary education,
yes,
and then went beyond that. So let's talk in the beginning then. Why elementary education?
I think that my parents have always said since I was little that I was going to be a teacher. So, I just have always had that in the back of my mind. And they've always said since I was little that, we'd be at a play date or a birthday party, and it would only take 5 or 10 minutes, and I'd have everybody sitting down, and I'd be standing up and telling everyone where to go and what to do, and, I'm making up games. And so, I've kind of always, I think, enjoyed leading a group and a team and helping others. But I actually, when I went to college, when I first graduated high school, I went to go into the medical field. And I joined a sorority, so I'm taking my anatomy and physiology and all of those science courses, which I do love and enjoy. However, with my sorority, I had to do, or maybe it was with cheerleading, but with one of the organizations I was involved in, I had to do some philanthropy, I was donating my time, and I went to a school. And I was in a school for an afternoon, and when I left, I said, well, that's what I need to do. I'm changing my degree, my major. This is where I need to be. I felt like, that was such a purposeful 2 hours to help these children and make a difference. And it was really fun, too. So I went for elementary education, and right out of college, I didn't want to, just come back to my hometown and get a cake teaching job where I grew up. I wanted to really use my degree and use, my passion for education where it was really needed. So I wanted to find kind of a ghetto or, a lower socioeconomic area, a place where I felt the kids really needed someone to love them and to teach them. So I applied in Chicago, and I applied in Hillsborough County in Tampa. And I don't know if you're familiar with Hillsborough County. It is the largest county in Florida, and it has some nice areas, but it also has some really, really not as nice areas. So I was hired over the phone. My very first teaching job. I'm 22. I may have still had the white cheerleading bow tied in my hair. on the phone interview, like I'm fresh out of college. And they hired me, and I thought, this is easy. I heard that getting a job, was going to be difficult. So I packed up my little car and my dog and a few outfits, and I drove to Tampa for my very first teaching position in second grade. And this school was an F-rated school. It was getting ready to be closed down if we didn't turn the grade around. Okay. And so I got there and realized that I was not hired because I'm amazing. I got hired because I can breathe and I had a teaching degree. I was a warm body, basically. And 3 people quit before I was hired, and it was the second week of school. One of them didn't even make it until lunch because it was just such a stressful environment, and the children were just I don't think any person or any child is naturally a bad person. I think that, if you're not taught love, if you're never around love or kindness, if you're never exposed to that, then you just don't know that. So these kids, they were getting themselves up for school. They came to school hungry. They weren't given kindness, so they didn't know how to act that way. So I survived that year. I'm here to tell the story, thank goodness. But I think I cried every day that year, every night, because I just wanted to take those kids home with me. It was really tough. And I stayed in Hillsborough County teaching for about 6 years until my oldest daughter was born. Okay. And that's when I moved back to the Midwest.
Excellent. Good old Midwest. A great place to raise kids.
Yeah, but education is still, the cornerstone of what I love and what I want to do. But then going into organizational leadership, I also am interested in how people behave and how businesses are ran and how we can improve. And then through teaching for so many years, because it's been 16 years now that I've been teaching. That story was 16 years ago. It's hard to believe. I've become really interested in brain science and learning and how we can improve and grow just through learning and the best ways for people to learn and understand, not just children in school or even, my graduate students, but us every day in our jobs. How can we be more effective in the way that we communicate and the way we learn and the way that we do things? So that's why when I really started getting into the neuroscience of learning and using that to help businesses and individuals grow. And here's Charlie, my dog, saying hello. He's bringing me a glove. Thanks, Charlie.
Oh, that's great of him. He knows winter is coming, and he wants to make sure you're still warm. Yeah. He's
a retriever, so he thinks that everything needs to be brought to me all day long.
Yeah, totally makes sense. Okay, great. So you have your MA in organizational leadership, and then currently getting your PhD in leadership in cognitive neuroscience. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, excellent. And so, So I know after you came back to the Midwest, you started working at Ivy Tech and started developing some curriculum for there. What attracted you to work at Ivy Tech, and what were you focused on at that point in your life?
Well, so my twins were born. They were just almost a year old, and I stayed home with them when they were infants. And I realized, I loved being home with them, and I adore my children, and being a mother is always going to be first for me. Mm-hmm. But there was something that was missing when I was home. And I really, had to sit down and think, I know that I can do this. I know that I can be a great mom and also contribute to others. And I felt that part of me missing, that connection and feeling like I'm contributing to society and contributing to others. So I basically made the decision, went upstairs and put on a suit that I hadn't worn in a long time. And I went out and I said, okay, so I'm going to I'm going to go apply for a job. And Ivy Tech was the first place that I stopped, and I got hired and started teaching there. And that is just the truth. But
you have very good luck with just job interviews in general.
I feel like I'm a very lucky person, but I also think that you make your own luck, and I feel as though we can prepare to make ourselves lucky by the way that we attack our tasks, by the way we attack our relationships in our daily life, and I feel like when you love other people and love the world, it loves you back. And I think that's why I said at the beginning I'm an idealist, because I really believe that. And I think that there are a lot of ways that you can create the luck that you find. Yeah. So I started teaching at Ivy Tech, and I am so grateful for that experience because, it really made me see again. It allowed me to work with students that maybe not necessarily all have done well in school. A lot of people that go to Ivy Tech didn't get into the college that they wanted to go to, so they're going to Ivy Tech for 2 years to get their GPA up before they can transfer. If you're not familiar with Ivy Tech, it's the nation's largest community college system. We have 32 campuses throughout the state of Indiana, and we serve about 175,000 students every year. So it's a very large system, but a very low percentage of graduates. And so I had a problem with that. I think that we can do better, and we need to do better. If we're providing an education for students, we need to ensure that those students can be successful. And I didn't necessarily feel like that was happening. And so, when my first book, Success, the Ultimate Guide to College, Career, and Personal Excellence, came out of that feeling of what can I do to help these students? They come into my class, and I see the burdens that they carry. I see the stress. I see the struggles. And what can I do other than just this content that I'm supposed to teach for the semester? What can I do to help them? And so that is really what spurred my interest in writing a book. I really hadn't thought about being an author. It just it was just something that I felt almost that I needed to do. So I started putting together all the work that I was teaching them for the course. It was a student success course, which I believe between 80 and 90% of all colleges and universities have a course. Some call it student success or first year experience. But it's a course where students are supposed to be learning how to survive in college, how to reduce stress and how to not procrastinate and how to managing their time. And so many pieces that I felt were not touched on the way that they should have been. And we were using a textbook that was $160. And, my students, they were making a choice on whether to get groceries that week or get the textbook. And that just didn't seem right to me. So, we can sit around and complain about things, or we can make a change. So I started writing, and I thought, okay, so I need to publish this if I'm going to be able to make it available for my students and make it larger on a broad scale, because, of course, I was giving my students that information. I had been using it in the class. But I really wanted to make it so that any student, even if they weren't in my class, was getting these research-based strategies that I knew were helping my students, and I wanted more students to be able to get that without just being in my classroom. Mm-hmm. So again, I've heard a lot of people that were, I was just listening to your podcast earlier that someone was saying, you have 25 no's before a yes, or 85 no's before you get your yes. But yeah. I did some research and found educational publishing companies, and it's wild, but I found the one that I felt was most suited to what my goals were. Mm-hmm. And I called up the editor